one of the things that drew me into the care world was seeing people living well with dementia, and
Mm,
it's it's not always something that you expect
yeah.
necessarily, but it was certainly for me in my 20s a kind of very eye-opening experience,
Yeah.
seeing people experiencing joy and laughter,
Yeah.
and honestly, some of the most joyful experiences of my life were in care home lounges.
Yeah.
And just I imagine there are people watching this who perhaps got parents who they're thinking might be at the early stages of dementia, or perhaps just
Mm,
had a dementia diagnosis. And I thought it might be interesting to explore how you do live well with dementia
yeah.
and those stresses for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think it's so important to highlight that, of course, it's challenging. Life is challenging. So, of course, add a diagnosis like that into the mix. And of course, there are challenges ahead, but absolutely, we've both seen hundreds and hundreds of people thriving, even with dementia. Um, and but there are sort of touch points along the way, aren't there? Um, and I have to say, my biggest takeaway from 15 years of working pretty much specifically with people living with dementia, and when I say people living with dementia, I mean sort of everyone that is touched by that diagnosis, so close family members, friends, etc., is the acceptance of being supported. It's not about necessarily the dementia itself. It's whether people will accept being helped or not. And when you can accept that you need a little bit more support than you used to, then honestly, it is actually quite simple to thrive, because we're looking at someone's whole being and we're putting life plans in place that support that whole being. And early on, when one might be noticing a little bit of memory loss, a little bit of confusion, disorientation to time and place, perhaps. I mean, the absolute sort of cliche examples are someone not quite remembering where they live, perhaps, or forgetting chunks of time in the near past. Um, then it's about exploring that and not sort of burying that in a hole, and looking for support whilst you can. And I think what we see so often is people waiting far too long to put the support in place. Totally understandably, it might be scary, it might be intimidating, understandable to think of someone being in your space that you don't necessarily know. Um, and I guess what we have found is that it just takes the right person, and that's what we're experts in, right? Is making sure we get that right person through the front door, really early on, perhaps more soon than most people might consider, because then you get to build the relationship, and relationship is everything to thriving. Um, so if you can get that support person through the door that is there just to pick up the little bit extra here and there, be it with life admin, all the dull paying of the bills and the ordering of meds, or making appointments, or getting to and from this appointment, um, or just making sure that there's someone that isn't sort of a friend who might also be elderly, um, accompanying someone to something, that a group, a club that they've always wanted to go to, so that that person doesn't start isolating. I think that's that really early touch point, isn't it? You start to see people hide themselves away, because maybe there's a little bit of nerves, there's a little bit of shame, perhaps, if they're worried that they might say the wrong thing or have forgotten something. And having that right person by someone's side early on, that becomes almost like a friend. It's not a friend, because obviously, they're a professional, but they're so friendly and they become so connected, that early stage of noticing that things aren't quite as it used to be can actually be really easily balanced by this support person, what we call our associates. And we call associates for good reason, right? Because they, yeah, are in relationship with, and yeah.
And no one really wants to go, this is my carer.
No, they
It's,
don't. Yeah.
um, yeah, that's part of the reason for the language, is
Yeah.
that it's fine to have an associate.
Yeah.
or indeed a friend, and feel free to introduce them
Indeed.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So I think, yeah, an early touch point is getting support in early, and that could be really light touch, right? That might be 2 hours a week, and knowing sort of where one's hotspots are for needing that little bit of extra support, and critically building the relationship with the person so that when you do need a bit more support, it's now not a stranger, it's someone that you've already trust. Your family might, or if you're lucky to have family, they already know and trust as well, and they can sort of step up levels of engagement as required. um, yeah, there's a lot of mixed opinions on diagnoses and seeking clinical medical support. uh, we would say you've got nothing to lose, everything to gain from turning to your GP and being referred to a memory clinic, and potentially being supported with some medications. It's complicated. It depends on which type of dementia you have, as to whether medications are effective and or risky, etc., etc. But the clinician will know that and handhold you through that process. Um, and then what that does do is make sure that you are in systems, on the radar of various systems within the NHS, that a little bit of support might be needed around the corner. And in some lucky areas, you might even make it to sort of social prescribing lists, where there's a little bit more of a holistic approach to making sure someone is living well.
And what would you say to son or daughter who's finding themselves getting frustrated,
Mm.
stressed, annoyed by their mum or dad?
Well, first of all, you're only human. It's going to happen. We all get frustrated by our mum and dad anyway, don't we? But no, it is challenging, and it's going to happen. Um, Enough relief for yourselves. So getting the respite, as it's called in the sector, getting some time out, which often means therefore putting a support package in place so that you can take the time out without feeling guilty and worrying about your mum or dad that they're being left alone. Um, and then I mean, it's difficult because every single person, and therefore every scenario that the person is in, is different. But we do see and hear patterns, and a common misconception, I think, is that mum or dad are sort of messing things about a little bit, and there's some kind of concern that there's some intentionality behind things that are being misplaced or forgotten, or and so I think I would urge that people get as much understanding of what dementia is and does to one's brain, because once you can understand that it really is not the person's fault whatsoever, and it is something happening to them, um, much like, if someone had a broken wrist, you wouldn't be upset with them for not being able to hold a cup. It's that same kind of extrapolation. Then you get a lot more empathy for it, and you get a lot of more of the sort of tips and tricks to work around the particular challenges that your mum or dad might be facing. Because depending on where the damage is in one's brain, we've got different lobes of the brain, and different dementias affect different lobes differently, then different limitations and challenges will be there. And you can almost play kind of dementia detective about it, and sort of pat yourself on the back when you recognize, oh, okay, so that's the occipital lobe playing up, and this is what I know what to do about that now to support.
And if someone's occipital lobe was playing up, what would you be
So
doing?
yeah, so the occipit, I don't know why I chose that one, but the occipital lobe is the part of the brain that processes any sort of visual information. So each part of the brain takes sensory data through the human five senses, and then makes sense of it and sends it to one's frontal lobe, that then sort of is our, chief exec, if you like, of the brain. And the occipital lobe is primarily, not solely, to do with visual processing. So one can have 20/20 vision, eyeballs all intact, but if the occipital lobe has damage, then you don't see things in the same way, put plainly. And so the kind of things you're talking about are light and dark, colours, movement, distance. Distance is close with the parietal lobe. And so as an effect, if you imagine like that light and dark is harder to perceive, you might bump into things. If distance is harder to perceive, you might miss your mouth when you try and put a cup up to it. If movement is hard to perceive, then walking around might be disorienting, and so on, so on.